Download the BCSN Plus app today. Local sports all the time. Visit bcsnnation.com for details. Discounts may apply.
Earlier this week, the Ohio High School Athletic Association announcing a vote on an emergency bylaw referendum. The bylaw in question would allow high school athletes here in Ohio to profit off their name, image, and likeness. And earlier tonight, I sat down with Northern Lakes League Commissioner Richard Browne to talk the implications of the vote, potential downsides, and if he did have a vote, where his loyalties would lie. Such a pleasure having the commissioner here on a night where Whitmer and Perrysburg are going to battle for a first-round bye in the postseason. You told me not to be formal, but I have to. It's the way my mom raised me. Commissioner, thank you so much for taking the time.
I appreciate the opportunity.
So we're discussing NIL for high school athletes here in Ohio. Just first off, your overall thoughts on Ohio potentially becoming the 45th state to allow high schoolers to profit off their name, image, and likeness.
It's kind of rare that Ohio is not leading the pack in something. When you look at what the OHSAA does, they're usually at the forefront, and this is something that's been brought up a couple of times to the member schools and hasn't been ratified, and now we're kind of at a point where a decision has to be made.
And you've had a bunch of conversations with athletic directors within the NLL. What is the sentiment regarding NIL and high school athletes here in Ohio?
Hey, I think because we understand that it's coming, nobody was surprised by this. I think everybody was anticipating it being done in May when the referendum votes take place. But then due to some litigation in the Columbus area, that vote's going to have to be moved up. So I think we're anticipating that, this could potentially pass. And I think with where we're at with NIL, by passing it, that's going to allow the member schools to kind of dictate what this NIL looks like for the state of Ohio.
But if it was your choice, who would be controlling what the legislation looks like? Of course, the OHSAA, they laid out bylaws, we understand that, but as far as enforcing it, who should get that role? Because everybody's already busy as is with things.
Yeah, so I think it has to start with the OHSAA, but then when we start with anything that's new, I think there's going to be a lot of questions. There's going to be compliancy issues, and my concern is who's going to oversee that? When something is not done to the bylaw, who's going to enforce that? And that's obviously going to fall back on the OHSAA ultimately, and it's probably going to create a lot more work for them, so I hope they're prepared for that.
And to the NLL's credit, you guys have been at the forefront of sportsmanship, leadership, perhaps most notably mental health, but what is the NLL prepared to do in regards to educating athletes and their families on what this world of NIL could be?
Sure, I think the framework started to come out this week, so we understand what it looks like. And what the OHSAA did was take a lot of the NIL things that are going on in other states and are going to apply it to this initial bylaw. So I don't think anybody's really surprised by what they've seen to this point, but now it's, how is this going to evolve? Just by having a bylaw doesn't mean that this is going to be set in stone for several years to come. And I think people are going to find ways to potentially take advantage of what's in there. And that's where the compliancy of this really comes down to. Who's going to enforce those rules?
Have you guys started thinking about how you guys can teach athletes and their parents about NIL?
Well, I've talked to some of my athletic directors, and now on parent meetings and things like that, that's one of those topics that's going to be at the forefront. You've got to manage it. You've got to lay out the expectations. If you don't, that's when things kind of fall apart. So you've got to get ahead of this, and we'll be ready if it does pass.
But when you look at the cons of having NIL with high school athletes, we're talking about increased pressure, potential of athletes being single sport athletes, exploitation of these minors by parents, by families. How do you guys look to address those concerns if this deal does pass?
I think it's all education. I think, it's going to be so new to so many people. And we've seen NIL, obviously, in the college athletic world. So how's that going to work in the high school world? I think it's going to look a lot different than what it does in college. So again, something new. We've got to educate our students and our parents and our administration of how everything's going to be handled.
It seems like NIL, high schoolers here in Ohio, is inevitable. It's just a matter of if it's going to be an OHSAA enforcing it or the courts. I know you don't have a vote over 800 member schools. It's going to be the principals voting on behalf of their institutions. But if you did have a vote, where would your loyalties lie?
Yeah, I think right now with the way this is laid out, I would want to vote in favor of this just simply because now our member schools can have a say in this. If we let the courts handle this and we do this outside the OHSAA, I see a lot of opportunities for things to fall apart real quick.
Now, you're on the record saying that you want the NLL to eventually go from 12 schools next year to 16 in the distant future. When you look at all these schools, some are going to have more athletes that have NIL deals than others. Would that impact your interest in bringing a school to the NLL?
Yeah, I think as you look at NIL right now, I don't think that's going to influence it very much. We want to find schools that, are like-minded with our other schools that we currently have. So, we've got a challenge there in trying to expand, but it's certainly something that we're always exploring.
And just to wrap on a lighter note, we're talking on a night where Perrysburg and Whitmer are going to war for a first-round bye in the postseason. You look later this week, Cardinal Division, boys soccer, Springfield and Southview. How gratifying is it to see your teams in the NLL compete with the best in Ohio?
The regular season is exciting, but when we ramp up to weeks 8, 9, and 10 in football, and then all of the end of the seasons and the other sports that we do, this is an exciting time for us. It's an honor and a privilege to be a part of it.
And I appreciate you taking time out of a busy night to join us here in studio. Thank you so much, and enjoy the game tonight.
Appreciate you. Thank you very much.